From Mencari Newsroom at redmencari.com.
Good morning, I'm Miko Santos with your today's rundown for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. Today's top stories: interest rate relief as Reserve Bank delivers second cut in 3 months. Coalition collapsed as Liberals and Nationals end their historic partnership. Flood devastated New South Wales communities. And the new data reveals the public sector outperformed private industry on gender pay equality. Australians with mortgage are breathing easier today after the Reserve Bank cut interest rate for second time in the 3 months. The cash rate now sits at 3.85%, with markets pricing at least 2 more or cut this year. Chief Investment Officer Scott Haslam from LGT Criston says the bank is responding to global economic uncertainty.
I think an expectation of around a couple of cuts that takes the cash rate closer to the 3% mark is a reasonable expectation. Economists debate a lot around what the normal or the neutral rate of interest is, and I think most people think it's somewhere around 2.75 to 3.25. And obviously today, after the rate cut we've seen, cash rates are still at 3.85, so there's a little bit more room there to bring them down towards normal. But I do think we're in a different world from where we were, say, half a decade ago, where inflation was very, very low and therefore interest rates could move much lower. So I think there might be some disappointment in terms of just how low interest rates might go over the next year or so.
However, Haslam warns rate won't return to pre-pandemic lows, with most economic expecting the cash rate to settle around 3%. The Australian dollar has strengthening to 64.5 US cents following the announcement. In a stunning political development, Australian coalition has collapsed after 80 years, with Liberal and National parties ending their formal partnership. The split leaves the government with a massive parliamentary majority facing a fractured opposition. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese returned from overseas visit to Indonesia and Singapore to find the political landscape dramatically changed.
Oh, that's a matter for them. Our job is to remain focused, and I make this point. Political parties will not be successful if they're focused on themselves. And that is what my task is, to focus on the needs of the Australian people. If the Liberal Party and the National Party want to focus on each other and focused on their internals, that's a matter for them. I lead a united party that is focused on the needs of the Australian people.
Treasurer Jim Chalmers echoed the government focus on governing rather than opposition politics. The split raised question about opposition staffing arrangement, whether the Liberals can work more independently on issues like climate policy. New Greens leader Larissa Waters hoped the division will encourage the Liberals to abandon their nuclear energy policy. Unprecedented flooding has left residents stranded across New South Wales, particularly in the Hunter region, with communities bracing for more severe weather. The extreme weather events are being linked directly to climate change impact. New Greens leader Larissa Waters called the flood as a stark reminder of the climate crisis.
Yeah, look, my heart goes out to those communities in and around the Hunter. This is the climate crisis, and how much more can we expect people to bear? I'm from Mencari, Brisbane, where we get big floods like that too, and it is so devastating. It's devastating to infrastructure, it's devastating to people's sense of security and safety. You panic now when you hear the big rainstorm and the thunderclouds gathering, and this is what is happening because we're burning too much coal and gas, and we don't have to be doing that. We've got amazing clean energy reserves here in Australia. We know they produce more jobs than old dirty fossil fuel energy, and we know they're cheaper, so we can keep people's power bills down and protect us from these worsening so-called natural disasters if we do that transition to clean energy. So really the message couldn't be clearer to government. No more fossil fuels. approvals, and we've got that big approval that's due for Minister Watt's decision at the end of next week on the North West Shelf, which is one of the biggest gas projects that we have ever seen in this country, for Woodside to fill their own coffers and make themselves very rich at the expense of everybody else, at the expense of First Nations justice, at the expense of, I think, beautiful places like Scott Reef, and at the expense of worsening those climate disasters that people are already feeling. So there's a really clear choice ahead. Do we want more coal and gas approvals? Please no. Let's just do great clean energy, job-rich proposals and finally put coal and gas out of the driving seat where they've been for so long with decision makers, and hasten that transition to a clean energy future.
Water used the flooding to criticize continued to foster fewer approvals, with a major gas project decision due from Environmental Minister Murray Watts by week's end. Emergency services continue to rescue operation as community assess the damage from what authorities are calling unprecedented flood levels. New data from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency shows federal public sector workers are leading the way on gender pay equality, with women earning 94 cents for every dollar earned by men, a 6.4% gap compared to 21.1% in the private sector. The data covers major public employees including the ABC, Australian Post, and the Australian Federal Police. Here's Mary Wooldridge, CEO of Workplace Gender Equality Agency, in an interview at ABC News.
Well, the results that the Workplace Gender Equality Agency has published today show that the federal public sector performs well in comparison to the private sector. When you look at the gender pay gap, which is the average remuneration of men and women and the difference between the two, it's 6.4% at the federal public sector. The comparator in the private sector is 21.1%, so substantially different. Now, of course, any aggregate hides some detail underneath it, but what that shows is consistently federal public sector agencies are performing well, although there is a range, of course.
Wooldridge attribute the success to sustained leadership commitment and strategic planning, but say discretionary payments like overtime and bonuses remain key driven of remaining gap, with men accessing these payments more frequently than women. That's our today's rundown for Thursday, May 22nd. The Reserve Bank rate cuts provide mortgage relief, the coalition split reshape federal politics, New South Wales communities battle unprecedented floods, and the new data highlights gender pay progress in the public sector. We'll continue following these developing stories through the day. I'm Mika Santos. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe at readmencari.com.
Subscribe to Mencari for news with authentic Gen X perspective, cutting through the noise with zero fluff. Available now across all podcast platforms. News without the noise, perspective without the panic.